My world tilted. Not from the lingering weakness that had plagued me for weeks, but from a sudden, sickening lurch in my gut. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under my wheelchair. Through the living room window, standing sharp and alien against the familiar green of our lawn, was a slash of garish red. A for sale sign. Planted there like a dagger in the heart of everything I knew. Martha gasped beside me, her hand flying to her mouth, her knuckles white. "John, no," she whispered, her voice thin with disbelief. "Our home. Our home. 43 years of memories soaked into these walls, these floors, this patch of earth. It wasn't just a house, it was the container of our entire life together. And it was for sale. Without our knowledge. Without our consent." My eyes darted towards the street, catching the glint of sun on metal as a dark sedan pulled away smoothly. David. Our son. Even from this distance, I could imagine the set of his jaw, the slight, satisfied tilt of his head. A chill, colder and sharper than any illness, snaked down my spine. What had he done? While we lay helpless, trusting him, what monstrous betrayal had he enacted? The red sign mocked us, vibrated with his deceit. But beneath the shock, something else flickered, a hard, brittle anger. He thought he'd outsmarted us. He thought we were finished. He had absolutely no idea what trap we'd already laid. My name is John. Most folks would describe me as being in my twilight years now. My hands are spotted, my walk is slow, but my mind, thankfully, is still clearer now perhaps than it had been in a long time. My wife, Martha, my rock for 52 years, navigates her days with a grace only deep love and resilience can provide, though her health is fragile too. We aren't the energetic couple we once were, the ones who painted these walls ourselves and chased a young boy through the sprinkler on the lawn outside that window. This house, it's more than our home, it's part of us. Built on a quiet, tree-lined street where neighbors still waved hello. Inside, the scent of lemon oil polish mingles with the faint, comforting aroma of old books and Martha's lavender sachets. You can trace the history of our family here. David's height chart, pencil marks still visible on the kitchen doorframe. The worn spot on the armrest of my favorite chair where I read countless stories. The faint indentation on the living room carpet where the Christmas tree stood year after year. We planned to draw our last breaths here, surrounded by these echoes, this peace. But time takes its toll. Climbing the stairs became an expedition. Weeding the garden felt like wrestling monsters. That's why Maria came into our lives. Initially just a few hours a week, helping with chores recommended by a church friend. But Maria, she was different. Efficient, yes, but with a quiet kindness, an intuitive understanding of our needs that went far beyond duty. She learned how Martha liked her tea, remembered the names of our long-gone pets, listened without judgment when I felt overwhelmed. She wasn't just staff, she became the steady, compassionate presence holding our fragile world together. David, our son, lived his own life, fast-paced, career-driven, 2 hours down the highway. We were proud of his success, of course, but the distance felt more than geographical sometimes. Visits were dutiful, calls often clipped. Checking in, everything okay? Good. Gotta run. We excused it. He was busy. Important. We clung to the belief, the parental hope, that deep down the connection was still strong, that he'd be there if we truly needed him. We couldn't fathom the chilling reality waiting just beneath the surface of his ambition. The turning point, the moment the ground truly shifted beneath us, came with the sickness. A vicious strain of pneumonia knocked me flat, stealing my breath and strength. Almost simultaneously, Martha's diabetes took a terrifying turn, her body rebelling against her. We went from managing just barely to being completely bedridden, imprisoned in our own home, utterly dependent. The doctor advised against the hospital initially, prescribing intensive home care instead. We felt profoundly vulnerable, adrift in a sea of weakness and medication-induced fog. And then David started appearing. Frequently. His briefcase always in hand, radiating an aura of take-charge competence that initially felt like a lifeline. "Don't you worry about a thing," he'd declare, striding through the house. "I'll handle everything." But the comfort was short-lived. His concern quickly morphed into an unnerving interrogation disguised as practicality. "Where's the main fuse box located? Do you have online banking passwords written down anywhere? The deed for the house, is it locked up securely?" He'd sit beside our beds, not offering comfort but scrolling through his phone, his expression intense. He'd talk about the house constantly. "It's just too big for your needs now. Think of the equity tied up here, equity you could use for top-tier care. Maintenance alone must be bleeding you dry. It wasn't helpful suggestion. It was a relentless campaign, chipping away at our sense of security, making our beloved home sound like a liability, a burden we were foolishly clinging to. His attitude towards Maria turned sour, laced with suspicion. He'd question her hours, imply she wasn't diligent enough. "Mom, are you sure Maria remembered your afternoon medication?" he'd ask, planting seeds of doubt. "Maybe a professional agency nurse would be better, Dad. Someone with more verifiable credentials." This, about the woman who was patiently spoon-feeding us broth, changing linens, managing complex medication schedules, and offering quiet words of encouragement when despair threatened to overwhelm us. Maria simply absorbed the barbs, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to David's restless energy. But I saw the hurt flash in her eyes, quickly hidden. A cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Martha would catch my eye after he left, her expression mirroring my own unease. Was this just his way of coping, his stress manifesting as control? Or was it something darker, more calculated? Why this sudden, intense focus on our finances, our property, our potential incapacitation? Why the deliberate undermining of Maria, our lifeline? The questions hung in the air, unanswered, poisoning the quiet moments between his disruptive visits. His campaign escalated. The topic of power of attorney became his constant refrain. "It's vital," he insisted, his voice taking on a tone of strained patience, as if explaining something obvious to difficult children. "What if you can't make decisions? Who pays the mortgage? Who manages your investments? Need the legal authority to protect your interests." He painted himself as the responsible son, burdened but willing to take charge for our own good. Yet, his eyes never quite met ours when he spoke about it. They scanned the room, assessing, calculating. He produced the documents one afternoon, thick, intimidating sheaves of paper filled with legalese. "Standard durable POA," he announced, dropping them onto the bedside table between us. "My lawyer drafted it. Covers everything." The pressure was immense. We felt foggy from medication, physically weak, easily confused. Asking for time, asking to consult our lawyer, Michael, whom we'd trusted for decades, was met with exasperation. "Dad, there's no time. We need this in place now. What's the problem? Don't you trust your own son?" The emotional blackmail was potent, designed to make us feel guilty, unreasonable. We held firm, refusing to sign under duress, but the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Then the small, unsettling incidents began piling up. Important mail started vanishing. The statement from our pension fund, a letter from Michael about updating our wills, ironic considering David's push. David would dismiss our concerns with a wave of his hand. "Slow mail service happens all the time." But then we'd hear him downstairs in the small study we used as a home office, the door pointedly closed. The muffled sounds of phone calls, the rustle of papers. What was he doing in there? His narrative about the house intensified. "Property values might dip soon, you know. Better to sell while the market's hot." I saw an article about rising crime in this area. He wasn't just suggesting anymore. He was actively trying to dismantle our attachment to our home, portraying it as unsafe, impractical, a financial drain. He started leaving brochures for assisted living facilities on our nightstands, glossy pictures of sterile, smiling communities that felt utterly alien. Maria became the focus of his direct criticism. He'd time her breaks, question her grocery spending meticulously, leave passive-aggressive notes about minor household tasks. He was trying to build a case against her, trying to drive her away. We realized why. She was our eyes and ears. She was loyal to us. She saw his impatience, his focus on assets, not our well-being. He needed her gone to have free rein. Maria, ever observant, began documenting things subtly. "Mr. Henderson, David took the spare set of house keys from the hook yesterday," she'd mention quietly. Or, "Mrs. Henderson, a man measuring the front lawn was here this morning. He said David sent him to assess the property lines." These weren't accusations, just observations delivered with a worried frown. But they were pieces of a terrifying puzzle falling into place. One night, the room lit only by the dim glow of the hallway light, Martha turned to me, her voice trembling but clear. "John," she whispered, "he's not trying to help us. He's trying to take the house. Now, while we're like this." Saying it out loud crystallized the horror. Our son. Our David. Actively plotting to seize our home, likely planning to sell it and control the proceeds, leaving us displaced and dependent in our most vulnerable state. The cold dread solidified into a grim certainty. He saw us not as parents needing care, but as obstacles to his inheritance. Then the bottom dropped out completely. My lungs succumbed further to the pneumonia, and Martha's condition deteriorated rapidly. We were rushed to the hospital, sirens wailing, lights flashing, a terrifying ordeal that left us utterly depleted. Hooked up to machines, drifting in and out of consciousness, we were miles away from home, completely at David's mercy. Or so he thought. This hospitalization was the window he needed. With us physically removed and heavily medicated, he accelerated his plans. We learned the full extent later, through Maria's tearful accounts and Michael's investigation. David had somehow obtained a temporary, possibly questionable power of attorney, maybe by finding an old, vaguely worded document, maybe by exploiting a moment of our confusion before the hospitalization, or perhaps even resorting to forgery. We still don't know the exact mechanics of his deceit. What we do know is he acted swiftly. He told Maria her services would soon be redundant, as his parents were being moved to long-term care. He changed the locks on the study door, barring her access to our files. The assessors and appraisers started arriving more frequently, men and women Maria recognized instantly as real estate agents, shown around while she was deliberately sent on errands. He was trying to secure a buyer, close a deal, before we were well enough to understand, let alone intervene. The chilling confirmation came via a phone call forwarded to my hospital room. A crisp, professional voice on the other end. Mr. Henderson? Just calling to schedule the final walkthrough and inspection for the buyers. David gave me this number. Is Tuesday convenient? Buyers? Final walkthrough? My heart hammered against my ribs. I stammered something incoherent about a mistake and hung up, the receiver slick with sweat in my palm. I looked across at Martha, sleeping fitfully in the next bed, tubes snaking around her frail form. The image of losing our home, of being cast aside by our own son, flooded me with a potent mix of grief and incandescent rage. How dare he? How dare he prey on our weakness, exploit our trust, try to steal the very foundation of our lives? When Maria visited that evening, her usual calm replaced by visible distress, she confirmed my fears. He had people over all afternoon, Mr. Henderson, she whispered, glancing nervously towards the door. They had measuring tapes, they were talking about closing dates. He told me to start packing your photographs. Packing our memories, for storage. The finality of it, the cold-bloodedness, struck me like a physical blow. Lying there, weak but lucid, a fierce resolve ignited within me. He thought we were down for the count. He thought his greed had won. But he'd pushed too far. He'd mistaken illness for helplessness, age for irrelevance. And he had critically underestimated our love and gratitude for Maria, the one person showing unwavering loyalty. We weren't finished yet. We were about to rewrite the ending of his predatory little story. The plan formed in the crucible of anger and desperation. If the house was the object of David's greed, then the house itself would be the instrument of his undoing. And the rightful recipient? The person who had earned our trust and shown us true familial devotion when our own blood had failed us. Maria. I waited for a quiet moment, when the nurses had finished their rounds and Martha was awake and alert. I laid out the idea, watching her face closely. The weariness in her eyes sharpened, replaced by a spark of fierce determination. Yes, John, she breathed, her grip surprisingly strong on my hand. He forfeited his right. Maria deserves it. Let's do it. There was no hesitation, just cold, hard certainty. Our son had made his bed, now he would have to lie in it, just not in our house. Executing the plan from hospital beds, under David's watchful eye during his daily visits, required extreme caution. We needed absolute secrecy. Our first and only necessary call was to Michael, our lawyer for decades, a man whose discretion was as legendary as his sharp legal mind. Using the hospital phone was too risky. David might check the call logs. Maria once again was our essential ally. During her next visit, finding a precious window when David was supposedly tied up in a meeting, we explained everything. Maria was stunned, then deeply hesitant. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, I couldn't possibly accept. This is your legacy. Martha reached out, patting her hand. "Maria," she said firmly, "you've given us more care and respect than we received from our own son. This is our decision. But we need your help to make it happen without him knowing." Understanding the urgency in our resolve, Maria agreed. From a payphone outside the hospital, she didn't even trust her own cell phone, fearing David might somehow track it. She contacted Michael. She relayed our desperate situation and our request for an urgent, confidential meeting at the hospital. Michael, grasping the gravity immediately, arranged to visit disguised as a routine consultation about our wills, a topic David himself kept bringing up, providing the perfect cover. Michael arrived a few days later, his calm demeanor a welcome balm. His briefcase contained not just estate planning documents, but the meticulously prepared deed transfer papers. He spoke with us patiently, ensuring we were both fully cognizant, explaining the life estate clause that would guarantee our right to live in the house for the rest of our lives, even with Maria as the legal owner. We were physically weak, yes, but our minds, fueled by righteous purpose, were crystal clear. Signing those documents felt momentous. My hand shook as I gripped the pen, the weight of severing that final tie to our son, to the future we'd once envisioned, heavy upon me. But the counterweight was the immense relief, the sense of taking back control, of ensuring justice. Michael and a trusted senior nurse, sworn to secrecy, acted as witnesses. The betrayal hurt, but the act of reclaiming our agency felt powerful. Michael promised to file the deed immediately and discreetly. When we told Maria it was done, she wept silently, overwhelmed. "I will always honor your trust," she vowed again. "This house is yours as long as you live." We knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that she would keep her word. We returned home from the hospital a week later, frail bodies carrying a potent secret. We resumed our roles as recovering patients, allowing David to continue his manipulative dance, unaware the music had stopped and the floor had vanished beneath his feet. We just had to wait for him to take the final, fatal step onto thin air. The call came barely 2 weeks after our return. David, his voice practically dripping with false solicitude and poorly concealed excitement. "Great news, Mom, Dad. Those investors I mentioned? They love the place. They're coming by tomorrow afternoon for a final look-see. Just a formality before we wrap things up." Investors. The lie was so blatant, so condescending. "Wrap things up?" I echoed, making my voice sound thin, confused. "What things, David?" "The house, Dad," he sighed, the impatience audible. I explained this. "Sold. Done deal. These people are wonderful and they're ready to close quickly. We can get you settled into the Willows next week. It's all arranged for your comfort." He spoke with the breezy finality of someone who has overcome minor obstacles, us being the obstacles. "And you need us here for this formality?" Martha asked, her voice frail but steady. "Of course," he replied briskly. "Looks better. Shows a smooth transition. Just relax, smile politely. I'll handle everything. Don't say anything complicated." The instruction hung in the air, insulting and infuriating. He truly saw us as doddering props in his play. The following afternoon, David arrived, practically strutting, flanked by the investors, a couple in sharp business suits, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, who looked efficient and slightly uncomfortable. David ushered them into the living room where Martha and I sat waiting. Maria hovered nearby, dusting a bookshelf, seemingly innocuous, but her presence was deliberate, planned. David launched into a self-congratulatory monologue about the house, the deal he'd secured, the neighborhood's future prospects. He barely acknowledged us beyond a cursory nod. The Petersons offered polite, tight-lipped smiles in our direction, their eyes betraying a flicker of awkwardness. After a quick tour downstairs, orchestrated by David, they reassembled in the living room. Mrs. Peterson cleared her throat. "It's a charming property," she offered, looking at us. "A lot of history here, I'm sure." "Indeed," David boomed, stepping forward, eager to close. "But time marches on. As I said, the sale is finalized, and my parents are quite relieved to be moving somewhere more suitable." He shot us a look that was both triumphant and warning. This was our cue. I took a deep, deliberate breath, letting the silence stretch just long enough to draw all eyes to me. "David," I began, my voice clear and carrying, cutting through his smugness. "I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding." David's plastic smile froze. "Dad? What are you talking about? Now isn't the time." Oh, I think it's precisely the time, I countered, holding his gaze. You mentioned the sale is finalized. But I have a simple question. How did you manage to sell a house that doesn't actually belong to you? A flicker of panic crossed David's face, quickly masked by irritation. He scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, Dad. Of course it's your house. The paperwork is perfect. Signed, sealed. He patted his expensive briefcase. Power of attorney. Remember? I remember signing many things under duress, I said evenly. But that power of attorney, however you obtained it, became utterly irrelevant concerning this property some weeks ago. The Petersons were now looking back and forth between us, confusion turning to alarm. David's face began to pale under his tan. What are you saying? He stammered. He's saying, Martha interjected, her voice resonating with quiet strength, that this isn't our house to sell anymore, David. It hasn't been for weeks. I nodded towards Maria, who stepped forward calmly, holding a simple manila folder. While you were busy arranging your formalities behind our backs, David, I explained, my voice cold, while we were lying in hospital beds, supposedly too weak and confused to notice, we took action. We had Michael, our lawyer, visit us. David stared, his jaw slack, the color draining completely from his face now, leaving it a pasty gray. Pure, unadulterated shock warred with dawning, horrified comprehension. We legally transferred the deed of this property, I stated, letting each word land like a hammer blow. With a fully executed life estate clause, ensuring Martha and I can live here peacefully until our final days. I paused, letting the full weight of it sink in before delivering the coup de grace. This house now belongs to Maria. Maria simply opened the folder, displaying the top sheet, an official, stamped copy of the recorded deed transfer. Her name clearly listed as the new owner. David exploded. It wasn't just anger, it was the incoherent rage of a thwarted predator. What? No. That's impossible. You can't. It's fraud. She manipulated you. Also, I have the POA. I have a signed contract with them. He gestured wildly at the stunned Petersons, his voice cracking, spittle flying. Your POA is meaningless regarding an asset we no longer owned when you tried to sell it, David, I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. And attempting to sell property under false pretenses, using potentially fraudulently obtained authority? I believe the Petersons might call that fraud. Mr. Peterson stepped forward, his face like thunder. Did you knowingly enter into a sales contract with us and accept a substantial deposit for a property you had no legal right to sell? He demanded, his voice dangerously low. David whirled towards him, eyes wide with panic. No. Listen, they're elderly. They're confused. She tricked them. We can sort this out. We are not confused, David, Martha cut him off, her voice like ice. We know exactly what we did. We entrusted our home to someone who values loyalty, kindness, and respect, qualities you seem to have forgotten entirely. She looked around the room, her gaze settling on Maria. This house belongs to Maria. End of story. David stood trembling, cornered and exposed. The smug confidence had evaporated, replaced by a raw, ugly combination of fury and humiliation. He looked from our resolute faces to Maria's quiet dignity, to the accusing stares of the Petersons. There was nothing left to say. His elaborate scheme had crashed and burned spectacularly right before his eyes. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with his utter defeat. The explosion, when it came, was pure, impotent rage. David started shouting incoherently, accusations of senility, threats of legal battles he knew he couldn't win, venomous insults directed at Maria, at us. It was the desperate tantrum of a man whose intricate deception had imploded. The Petersons had seen enough. Mr. Henderson, the husband said curtly to David, his tone glacial, expect to hear from our attorneys regarding our deposit and damages. They retrieved their coats and walked out, barely glancing back, leaving David alone in the wreckage of his scheme. He stood there for a moment, chest heaving, face contorted. He glared at Maria with pure hatred, then turned that glare on us. You threw me away, he hissed, his voice trembling with suppressed violence. Your own son. For her. He practically spat the last word. Then, with a final hateful look, he wrenched the front door open and stormed out, slamming it so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. That slam echoed the final closing of a door in our lives. We haven't seen him since. We don't expect to. In the sudden, profound quiet, the tension slowly dissipated, replaced by an almost overwhelming sense of relief. It was over. We were safe. Our home was safe. Maria stood nearby, tears tracing paths down her cheeks, but her expression was one of profound gratitude and relief, not just for herself but for us. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will cherish this trust. Always." Life found a new, quieter rhythm after that day. We informed Michael of the confrontation. He handled the communication with the Petersons' lawyers, confirming the legal status of the deed and ensuring David understood the potential consequences: fraud, misuse of POA, should they choose to pursue it. We decided against taking any further legal action ourselves. The public humiliation, the loss of the house, the severing of ties, and whatever financial fallout he faced from the buyers felt like sufficient justice. His greed had cost him everything that truly mattered. Martha and I continued to live in our beloved home, surrounded by the comfort of the familiar. The life estate clause ensures our peace of mind, while Maria, the rightful owner, manages the property with grace and respect, always consulting us, always making sure we feel secure and cherished. It's a partnership built on mutual trust and affection, a stark contrast to the betrayal that precipitated it. Sometimes in quiet moments, the ghost of that betrayal lingers. The knowledge of what our son was capable of is a heavy burden, but it's overshadowed by the deep, enduring satisfaction of knowing we outsmarted him. We turned his own greed against him. We protected ourselves and rewarded true loyalty. We learned, in the hardest way possible, that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the ties you choose, the respect you earn, and the kindness you show when it matters most. We have our home, we have our peace, and we have Maria. Justice in its own quiet way has been served.